Maxine Doogan with Dominate the Nation with my co-host.
I'm Domina Elle. I'm in Denver, Colorado.
And we're joined today with Jelena. Did I say it right? No.
It's all right. Jelena Vermillion. I'm based in Cambridge, Ontario, in Canada.
Thanks for that. And she is a famous porn star. She has won some awards, some really cool awards, the Transgender Erotica Award, and she is an internationally acclaimed kinaesthetic artist. How do you say that?
I call myself a kinaesthetic artist, a person who is using their body and movement to create art. I'm also a dancer, so that relates to movement and the body in multiple ways, not just in an erotic sense.
Awesome. And so I saw your interview recently in Salon and talking about the Foix de Sesta disaster for Canadians. And I felt like it was really important to hear from some of the international people what's going on. Yes. So the other thing I saw about you in the Salon article is that you were talking about the international workers of the world, the industrial workers of the world, the IWW.
Yes.
And so I was really happy about that, and I have actually, I've been to Toronto. I had spoken in Toronto and in Edmonton, back in 2006, 2007, the IWW flew me there and we got to have some discussions on sex worker organizing and what that looked like for the sex worker nation. So I was thrilled that at least they were thinking about it and looking at it. And so when you came up in the media spotlight, you caught my eye.
Well, so. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've my personal involvement with unions has been more recent and limited, but I've always been very societal and union minded. One of my good friends did work for the CLC in Canada and has had extensive experience not only with I believe he worked a lot with grievances at some point on an appointed basis from when he had a certain employer, and so speaking to him about the labor movement in because he's a steel worker. And a very, very big supporter of sex workers and trying to integrate them into the movement and having their voices highlighted. So through my involvement, my friendship with him, and through my own personal organizing, I am a stamp card member with the IWW, my local faction here, and we're trying to start. It was I believe, hilariously enough, 16, I forget which one it is, for the local sex work faction. So through Toronto. So we're all trying to have our voices established in the secular way, and it all starts with getting in the door. So as far as the IWW is concerned, I feel like they have the best platform as far as being a very nonpartisan sort of, political influence on the labor movement. And I've always found the way that they handle things to be more or less acceptable. So.
Yeah. So for listeners, the industrial workers of the world is a century old, well, maybe not quite a century, but pretty close to a century old union organizing model. And their model was to organize all types of workers into one big union, and then just to have the local broken down by industry as opposed to by locality, which is what traditionally unions do now. Say, for example, SCIU, which is the Service Employees International Union that organized the lessee ladies here in San Francisco back in the late 1990s. They did it through their local 790, which were primarily janitors. So you had janitors organizing peep show strip club workers, which is great. But in the industrial workers of the world model, everybody's part of the same union. It's just the locals are broken down by industry. So 690 is the sex worker part of the IWW. And the IWW has a long history of supporting sex worker rights. Some of their founding members, their early members back at the turn of the century, did a bunch of organizing in support of prostitute rights. There was we did a bunch of panels on this back in 2007, 2008 over at Laney College, because they have a local labor certificate that you can get at your local college, actually. And so we had some panels over there, and Gregor Gall came from Scotland, and he's the one that wrote that book about sex worker union organizing. And he spoke, and we had another member from IWW speak about the history of the red light movement, the red light districts, and where the red light came from. And the red light, I don't know if you guys know this, a little, horror trivia history here, but it came from the fact that when the railroad workers carried their red light, at the end when they were on the railroads, the railroad workers had the red light and the lanterns. And so when they would come to their stops, their layovers, they would go to the local whorehouses and they would put their red lantern in the window to let everybody know, she's occupied, do not disturb. So that's kind of where the red light comes from. And actually the railroad workers have a long history of organizing. Yeah, exactly, right?
I just happen to have one.
Red is our color. So, there's a long history of, the IWW organizing, say, for example, the miners in Nevada, and the sex workers the prostitutes supported the miners' strike because they knew their economy depended upon the wages of the miners.
Right.
So if the miners were getting the shaft, to coin that term in a lot of bad ways, then that meant that the prostitutes were too. So there's a long history of prostitutes standing side by side with other striking workers. And anyway, I just thought I would just throw that in there. And more recently, we had the IWW here in the Bay Area support, what became Prop K, which is a 2008 San Francisco ballot measure that we collected signature for and circulated and got on the ballot to decriminalize prostitution. So that piece of legislation didn't pass at the city level, but, it definitely, like I was telling somebody this morning on Twitter, the people that signed that ballot initiative to help qualify it as a ballot measure, we collected over 12,000 signatures. Some of those people who signed to support decriminalization are sitting elected officials today up in our state capitol and, have our back. So, circulating ballot measures, even though they might fail at that local level, but they can still have some long-term positive effects. So enough of my history.
Oh, I love that.
That was awesome.
I enjoy hearing about it. And there is so much history that brings up a point in our movement that so many people are not aware of, especially the more recent newbies that since Sesta and Fosta, they just woke up. Oh, yeah, we need to fight for our rights. Yeah. But there's this institutional memory that has so many valuable, there's so much valuable information there, so I'm happy to hear that stuff. So
Same. I think it's good. I think it's a public service just to get that info out there in general and
Right.
to show that organizing has actual impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
June 2nd, International Horse Day, and we can circle back around and end with some more, union stuff because, there's a lot to say about that. But that's probably the big thing, in the news today is the we all participated in the June 2nd event. I, for one, was really excited to finally see the American, Horror Nation stand up on this day. I know that internationally there's been a long struggle between, June 2nd and the March 3rd, the Sex Worker Rights Day and then the International Whores Day. And I know that some of our overseas, brothers and sisters would be like, hey, aren't you guys going to do anything for International Whores Day?
Totally.
To finally see, that catch on and be a thing over here in the U.S. I'm just thrilled. So, maybe our guest could talk a little bit about what she did for International Whores Day and how that all worked out.
So I will confess I am a bit of a homebody. So I mostly spoke with my fellow sex workers on telephones and wanted to increase the morale that everybody was feeling that day, essentially. So there's little I made these little candle things, and I have I'm a spiritual person. I identify as a Wiccan, so I have my altar. If I can sort of show it, if that's pertinent.
If you'd like to, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm able to. So it's up. Where is it? It's sort of there on that shelf.
I see. Yeah.
Sort of see. It's a little bit ornate. So I lit a little candle and I put it on my altar. And so I sent them a photo of it on Messenger and had a phone call with some of my closest sex worker friends that are both, some of them that I called were both local, or not both local, sorry. Some of them were local and some of them were in California. I had my friend Michelle, and some of them were, I had a friend in Brazil as well. So just sort of basically being hey, making the connections that I could on that day, because I had a car recently that got totaled, so I would have been able to attend an event in the bigger city if I still had it, but this was my way of still commemorating and making that meaning and sort of connecting with other sex workers while still being inside. Yeah.
Right on.
Awesome. Yeah. For a lot of reasons, there could be workers that, couldn't come out. But got to see. Yeah.
It's not something that's always accessible. Sometimes the events are held in spaces that are literally not physically accessible to those who are limited in their mobility or those people who use wheelchairs. Sometimes the events are not very well maintained in the sense that people don't feel safe showing up to an event with that kind of public vulnerability. And a lot of the times, there is that risk associated with any political action. So, I hope that people don't feel any sort of shame if they weren't able to. Because I know that I was able to still find meaning in it, even if I wasn't able to leave my home that day,
That's
For
right.
Sure. Yeah.
How did your International Whores Day go?
Well, I went to the People's Fair in Denver, Colorado, which is, it's an interesting fair. There were many thousands of people there, and you have all sorts of tents with, people running for office who are more, community issue minded. You had the justice reform people there, ACLU there, a lot of different organizations. And so I walked around with a sign that said, "Today is International Whores Day. I love erotic service providers. Please support decriminalization." Google it. And, people were stopping me left and right. What does your sign say? And I just stand there for them. And I got so many high fives and thumbs ups and hugs and thank yous. And, it was just, wow, wow. I mean, I really do think that we have so much support in the general public that many of us, we see these hateful, horrible, nasty, coming at us attitudes from the opposition, that we may not understand that we really do have a tremendous amount of support out in the regular world, away from these narratives that, these people that want to hurt us, abolish us. And, that was really good to see that. But anyway, and then I was also tuning in with what you were doing, Maxine, outside of Amy Schumer's, performance, sending vibes, and I could just sense it and feel it. You could just feel it. You could just feel the energy that day,
Aww. Absolutely.
But, it's really important to me, and I'm glad, just like you said, Maxine, to see the United States. I mean, we really need to get off our asses as a collective, mobilized force. It's about damn time, we really need. And that's why I love talking about this union, because the unions, the union trainings and that community, the labor rights movement has so much for us and so much support there too. They understand these struggles, and they have information that we could use to help us to become better organizers. And they're making that information available to us, and we should, I think, go and get it. But anyway, let's taking it back to the unions again.
Well, it's through my union training in the Summer Institute of Union Women, which is a regional labor school that I got access to through my association with organized labor through the San Francisco Labor Council here, to start to get that training about how to organize, how to protest, how do media. And so media is, one of the key things. Media is what really brought me into the sex worker rights movement, because when I came into the sex worker rights movement, I was pissed off. I had been arrested. I had been in jail several times, and I was pissed off. There was nobody there to stand by me. I was pissed off that the meetings, the old Coyote meetings were not accessible to me. I was a new person. Nobody knew who I was. I was not part of the in crowd. But, I was able to see some of the other organizing that other people were doing, and I was able to gain access to that and got some education through the Summer Institute for Union Women, which is, now I lead one of the workshops, for them, and I get to talk about, sex worker organizing and what that looks like. So I use my organizing skills, to turn out this Amy Schumer protest, for International Horse Day. It just so worked out that, here she was, one of the main proponents of voice assessment, with doing her promotional videos about it. And, the devastating effect that it's had on our, community, both locally here in the United States and internationally. And, I just ended up Googling it, and because, we were on Twitter. Elle actually was on Twitter yelling at the producer of the I Am Jane video that they, the propaganda videos that they make whenever they're trying to move a large legislation here in the U.S. They get Hollywood to, do one of these high-profile propaganda pieces about the sex industry. And so then one of the other strippers came on and she said, hey, Amy Schumer did this piece on burying a dead stripper. And I was like, what? Yeah. So I started to Google that, and here it came up that she was going to be in San Francisco for National Horse Day. And I just thought, he got us. I'm going to go. This is my protest right here. We're doing this, And it's very successful. We talked to a lot of people, once again, like you, Elle, out on the streets. When you talk to the general public, they support us. And when they hear that Amy Schumer, is doing, killing strippers as a comedy piece, some people were like, what? And some people were like, that's Amy. And I was like, yeah, but not everybody who's doing comedy pieces about dead strippers is also actually lobbying for legislation that got passed that's actually going to hurt strippers, really going to hurt sex workers. And then they were like, oh, that's weird. Why would Amy do that? So we were able to get a lot of press, and, we saw some of the post press that came out in our local newspaper, because getting local coverage is really important, for your issue, because the local people are the one that support you. They're the ones that vote for the district attorneys. They're the one that vote for the legislators. So, getting your issue out locally is a really important piece. And so the San Francisco Chronicle came out with a piece that, she mentioned being protested by sex workers on stage in the middle of her piece.
Right on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. She cut her piece short because I'm sure she was rattled. You know, she had one of her people, there was this gal riding around on a bicycle in front of the event as we were passing out flyers and talking to people about, you know, protesting Amy. And one of the gals on the bike, she's like, "Oh, I want to see your flyer. I'm Amy's best friend." And I'm like, "Well, here." So you go get Amy, you get her out here. We want to talk to her, you know. So I feel like our protest was extremely successful. You know, we have to put these type of celebrities on notice. They're not going to get away with supporting these bad pieces of legislation that hurt our community, both locally, nationally, and internationally. It's unacceptable. They need to be held accountable, just exactly like the people who voted for this bad legislation. And so, you know, for the U.S., you know, Congress to be voting on this legislation that's had detrimental effect on, you know, workers in Canada, you know, it's just despicable. And, you know, we have to be more strategic in how we're going to hold these people accountable.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I talked too much.
No, I don't think so.
Don't apologize.
You know, yes, absolutely. And it's time. I mean, I'm glad that there's so much talking going on about this, but, you know, you bring up a point, and with the, you know, to be better organizers, that was something I was impressed with. Jelena, is you know, the way you handled yourself in the media, you know.
I did have help from a friend when I was approached by, I believe it was Shira is her name, or I'm just going to double check that I don't want to misquote her name. Yeah, no, Shira Tarla. I had contacted my friend for just sort of like, who is also a sex worker and who is also a part of the IWW, just to be like, hey, before I speak about this union-related sex worker thing or union-related sex worker adjacent thing, can I just like confirm that what I'm saying is like going to represent our issues well? So my words were definitely inspired by my friend in the sense that like they helped me confirm and validate that it was like going to be received well. So I definitely can't say that they were completely mine, but I feel that, you know, in the redistributing resources sort of sense of things, that you know, it's really important for sex workers to be able to articulate and to telegraph what our intentions are in this movement. So it's not really necessarily about who said what, as it is about the work and the organizing getting done. So I just wanted to be transparent about that, but also clarify, like, it's all, like, the work needs to get done. The media needs to be given the right information, regardless of who it is spearheading that. And, like, you know, I think that the contact that I have had with the media has definitely been a part of my activism. But there's a privilege in that. There's definitely a privilege in being someone that can approach the media, feels comfortable interacting with the media, taking on that risk, and also, like, there's, like, you know, respectability politics that plays in with that, which is a bunch of shit. So I appreciate it. And yeah, speaking to Shira about the IWW and in its context with sex work, it was, I'm just glad that it seems reporters and journalists are now listening more, and they are, even if they independently or individually don't have the most informed, you know, lens, they are much more open, it seems now, because of the discourse that's happening in the United States and a lot of North America, of course around the world. And it's heartening, because it's definitely a contrast from what I've encountered in the past. Because I mean, obviously both of you are larger veterans than I am. I've been in the industry since 2013, both in full-time, first full-service sex work, and then pornography was sort of like an addition to the other kinesthetic things that I was involved with. So I've had this broad sense of how important it is for us as, you know, this industry to really communicate our needs and, you know, how we're being harmed by this diaspora, if you will, of sex workers across the globe not knowing how to best, operate in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I too, I mean, and I emailed my team, as soon as we got that first piece of pre-protest media published, and just thanked my team. I've got a team of people behind me that, help write the press releases. I, send them out, but, we work together as a team to get the voice out there, and, to be able to get more people in the media to talk about, our industry, and to be able to articulate the issues in the way that the media can soundbite them. Unfortunately, they're soundbite based platform. And, I really struggled with that in the beginning. My mentor was Daisy Anarchy, who came out of the sex worker organizing for labor, human, and civil rights out of SCIU 790, who helped organize the Lusty Ladies. But Daisy had a big media. She wrote poetry. She did slam poetry. She, would open up for punk bands, in Europe. She had a big media, gift that she had. And, and I had to follow in that footsteps. We could have a whole, discussion on, being out in the media and what that means. And, but, basically some of my foray into the labor movement was through the labor media, who gave me license to learn and make mistakes. And, they just supported me and just said yes. And that's what I love about organized labor. They just say yes. They don't say no.
And the last training I went to, one of the trainings was, how to speak publicly. They have all sorts of trainings regarding every aspect of fighting for your rights. And, that was something that, was like, yeah, right on. And talking points was one, I'm hopefully going to be doing one of those here next month in Berkeley at the Summer Institute for Union Women training. And, I think it's so very important that, our voices have been co-opted time and time again by our opposition. And, I understand that when, we're just, there's many people who are just stepping up to the plate and what a big deal it is. And like you touched on earlier, it is, when you're up there speaking, you're speaking on behalf of your community. It isn't about you, it's about us. And, I want to do the best job I can if I'm ever in that position. I feel I have a responsibility to, to do the best I can and to pack a punch, that our talking points can't be used against us. They can't be co-opted. They can't be used to keep us criminalized. And I think that we need training around that and to realize, well, okay, we need training and to get it. And I think the union platform, the labor rights is right there. They've got it. They've got it down. And that's, I've learned so much from Maxine, and that's her platform, is from the labor rights. And I also identify with what you said. It's my voice, our voices are combined. I mean, we're inspiring each other, teaching each other, and it's a wonderful thing. I feel so very fortunate. But yes, it's not just me. It's all of us. So sorry to go on.
That's wonderful. I wanted to speak a bit about sort of Sesta and Fosta. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it.
Got
it. In the Canadian context, I did a radio interview with. It was actually she was a substitute host, so I can't remember her name, but it was the current.
We're gonna link it because I listened to that interview.
Oh, that one, perfect. Yeah. So I felt like that was a good example of like really positive media interaction, because I think like from a surface level, with it was the gentleman who spoke first, and he sort of came from this perspective of internet security, privacy rights. And then I spoke, and then the third person was a woman, just sort of like fundamental, values with, she just sort of kind of repeated herself, and she sounded incoherent, in my opinion. So I felt like that was like a really nice, like refreshing change to see, oh wow, the sex worker, like the whore, is more articulate and more well received by the public and sounds more put together. It was just it was nice. Like I, as an individual, am well put together and I can speak well, so I don't have, but it was really nice to see that in a public way. So speaking about Sest and Fosta, I mean, wow, it's been a huge impact. There have been bodies. There's a body count. I mean, there are people losing their homes. There's a huge impact. There's people changing the way that they operate, in the way that they may instill less safety precautions because they have less option to place those boundaries because of the websites that are less available to them to advertise on, namely Backpage, that were most popular, that were the largest source of their income, perhaps, and other websites such as Eros, from what I understand, or one of the websites is no longer accessible from the States, but it's accessible to us still. I think it's the Erotic Review.
I think so.
Yeah, so like the United States side can't access that, but we still have access to it. But the culture of it up here was such that it wasn't really, it was used, but it wasn't it didn't hold as much weight as it did in the United States. I suppose the culture of it just was not the same. So Fosta and Sesta has had this weird sort of protracted effect of. And it's sort of strange because sex workers are so ingenious, right? So we adapt very well even to the worst of situations. So I feel like the media coverage has been incredibly important because as much as sex workers are rising up in closing ranks and doing their best to stay afloat independently and organized as an industry, that perhaps their increased effort to accommodate these changes makes people feel that they're not actually struggling or not actually under fire as much as we are. And it's there's psychology in there that plays a part in the way that people just understand another person's plight. But I think that expressing that this is violence and that this is harming people who do sex work, and those people are people that even if you want to believe that fact or not, and multitudes of sex and like the politics around sex work being either full service sex work or cam work or something else, sugaring, something like that, BDSM, etc. It's all, there's like a lot of divisiveness that seems to be happening right now. Like a lot of the people who did sex work adjacent work or sex work that wasn't full service sex work perhaps are finding themselves more political as they have to be now. And it seems that some of that pressure is causing divisiveness in our community, in the sense that those that have never done full service sex work or maybe would never do it have a sort of, I don't know, there just seems to be a divisiveness, and I know both of you know what I'm speaking to. I'm trying to speak about it in a way that's like, it doesn't seem condescending.
I love her, Maxine. I love her.
You know what I mean? Because ultimately it's like, there's whores hating whores, and it's just like, seriously, can we just get together and they already hate us. Can we not fight among ourselves? So
like here in the United States, we have divisiveness based on ethnicity now. Where white sex workers being excluded because they're white, and we can't be doing that. We're all disenfranchised. We're all in the same boat. They hunt us. They hunt us. You know, we have to stand up together and fight and show the world how it's done, you know? We're leading, you know, in so many ways, you know, like we could teach the world about consent, we could teach the world about love, we could teach the world about so many things. They need to get off our backs and let us do what we need to do, and we have so much to offer. And healing, you know, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen within our community. And I would love that. I would love it. But we need to learn how to talk to each other. I think that's one of the things that, and that's what I think I do personally believe that going and getting labor trainings would help with, you know, nonviolent communication, conflict resolution, you know, so many things that we could get out of it that, and bring that to the table and also make a little more room for each other to not be, everyone seems to be trained to look through the world through lenses of narratives, you know, because there's so many narratives, social narratives going on that we're fed and bombarded by the news and by all, you know, all sorts of sources. And you know, what's our narrative as a combined community, you know, and to love each other, and yeah, I wish for that, and I'm hoping that will come, you know. I'm trying to be optimistic about it. Please continue.
Oh, no. I totally agree. I mean, we have to be realistic about the situation at hand. There is divisiveness, and all we can do as privileged, you know, in our own ways, sex workers, in the media, doing some of this, you know, like Liara Rue and other people doing, you know, grassroots organizing in their communities is talking to each other, as you said, because there's a lot of disillusionment, I think, when it like not just from the public about sex work. There's a lot of misconceptions and disillusionment when it comes to that. But I mean, even within our own community, like as individuals, we may have felt so alone in our industry, but talking to each other really helps to not only remove that illusion of being alone in these struggles, but also helps to bond us in our struggle, and it really just is more conducive to organizing, really, if we understand what our plight is and are able to further identify, or more accurately identify, how to continue the fight.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about Foista and Sesta is that they named prostitutes. You know, they specifically named prostitution in that platform. So, you know, you saw for Instagram ban strippers hashtags and then reinstate them. You saw, you know, there's effects on the legal parts of the sex industry.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's a big divide. Is that, you know, the legal part of the sex industry, it may be that, you know, there's people like you who, you know, might do full service work and also, you know, do, you know, the adult film performing, you know, either as camming or as a, you know, a bigger star, you know, but they're active, you know, they see that there's a problem, but the underpinnings of the businesses that support those legal businesses don't want to do anything.
Absolutely.
They
the
don't
banks. It's the banks.
There's the banks. I mean, there's a whole bunch of web developers, and there's a whole bunch of you know, the third-party credit card processors. There's the people that actually you know, put together the webcamming businesses as a business. You know, there's a big foundation underpinnings of the business that I think the you know, even people like me, you know, in, you know, full body sensuous massage, you know, doming, escorting, you know, are unaware that, you know, we don't have those big underpinnings in our part of the industry like the legal part has.
Right.
So when you're talking about, you know, trying to, well, what I'm talking about is trying to actually get some common ground, you know, with workers. But, you know, the legal part of the workers seem to look at their businesses to validate them. The businesses carry forward, their production of their labor for their support, which makes sense because they're closer economically to those businesses. So if those businesses don't want to stick their neck out and say, yeah, criminalization of prostitution is a problem for us, and Foistis Vesta, really amplifies or exposes what that problem is, and we need to come out for complete decriminalization of prostitution. And what can we do to support, not only our legal workforce, but for this other part of our industry that many of our talent is working in, right? When they're not doing porn, they're working in the illegal parts of the sex industry, exactly. Right? So, there's that issue. And so when you're trying to build common ground and coalition build within our own industry, and to use some labor rights approach principles to do that, that's the big challenge here. To get people together in a more face-to-face situation to talk about what's going on, because that's what we do in labor organizing, right? We talk about our real work, we identify what we're really doing, to talk about, how the economy is affecting all of us, the economy that matters to us, our intertwined economies, and what is negatively impacting those economies, and, what we can do to fight back. When you have somebody like Amy Schumer, who is a big, Hollywood star, who is passing these bad laws that are impacting the whole prostitute nation, the whole sex worker nation across the globe.
And she capitalizes on that as well.
Yeah. And she makes, her own, capital, personal financial gain through making jokes about us. That's her punchline.
Yeah.
That's an unfair business practice. That's what that is. For people to affect our economy, that's called an unfair business practice. And they need to be called out on that. And they need to be held accountable for that. We're not going to their, contract meetings where they're writing their contracts with, their business managers and with their agents and with their Hollywood contracts and saying, she's so exploited that she doesn't know the difference between hitting a hooker, a stripper over the head with a shovel in her, when her act and her comedy act, and tying together politics. She needs to really go back to school first before she signs this contract.
Oh shit! Right back home. Yeah. Well, she plays the part. That's for sure.
How do we want to wrap up our session today? I know we all got to get going and continuing all the good work that we're doing.
High five.
I hope that we can speak with you some more, and I'm really glad to make this connection. And I sense that we share some wavelengths here that are pretty awesome, and I'm really glad for that. And appreciate you very much for putting yourself, for doing what you're doing, and and
likewise.
Thanks.
We're obviously I'm turning 25 in August, so obviously I'm a bit but I think that in the sense that full service, whether you're a full service provider or whether you're a CAM person or whether you've been in this industry for 20 years, whether you've been in this industry for a shorter period of time, we all can find common ground, as you were saying, Maxine. Yeah. So, and I think that, I definitely echo that we share wavelengths, so I'm glad to hear that. Makes me feel nice and appreciated. So thank you for having me, really. I think that, finding common ground, that's the best way you put it. Absolutely, Maxine. Yeah, and Domina. So one thing you mentioned just before we wrap it up, Maxine, I believe it was that your participation, what was it? You got into union just through the labor movement, just through, I forget what it was, but it's the same with me. It's mostly just like been adjacent to sex work that I've been like, oh, okay, yeah. And then understood that it really is the same thing, like almost that I was alienated from the concept that I could be organizing in an industry, you know, as an industry. So just sorry, as an aside. Yeah.
Well, thank you for our guest today. Thank you for joining us on Dominate the Nation, our post June 2nd International Horse Day show with our international guest from Canada, from Ontario, Jelena Vermillion of the IWW, and the wonderful engineer for our show today is Domina, Elle from Denver, Colorado. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.